Hi, everybody. It's Peter Schiff. This is Saturday, August 8th, 2009. First, let me talk a little bit about the money bomb that exploded yesterday. There was a group of individuals, not affiliated with me personally, who sponsored a money bomb. They went and they did a shifathon on a website and actively solicited donations to my potential Senate campaign. And there's been a lot of confusion I've read on the internet with respect to how much money was actually raised by the money bomb. Now, I think the money bomb was very successful. It was not, they did not meet the goal of raising $1 million in a single day, but that was certainly a tall goal. And it's always nice to set a goal that you can strive for. So far, I think about $300,000 has been raised since yesterday morning. Probably the majority of that is from the money bomb. But there is also some confusion because on my website, on the Shift for Senate site, it now shows about $765,000 in contributions. What happened was we never had a counter on the website. And we worked to put a counter up for the day of the money bomb so that we can see the effects of the money bomb and people could see. And so the day before the money bomb hit, the counter went live. And I think the counter started at about 450,000, or maybe a little bit more, because that's how much money had come in the previous few weeks as a result of my own efforts to try to raise some money for my exploratory committee. But now we have a total of getting close to almost $800,000 raised in the combination of a money bomb and my own efforts, which is still a very significant amount of money for somebody to raise who's not even a candidate yet. And I've raised that money in under a month. You can contrast that to the front runner in the Republican Party, Simmons, who raised $750,000 last quarter, which was 3 full months, and that was a record for one quarter ever for a primary in Connecticut candidate to raise. Obviously, I'm going to beat that record. I mean, I've almost beat it in 1 month. I'm certainly going to beat it in the quarter, even if I don't announce my candidacy. But to the extent that I do become a candidate, I'm obviously going to beat his record, and I doubt he's going to beat his own record this quarter. So that would certainly put me in a good position. I think the media is going to be very interested in covering this story. So I think it makes a lot of sense for people who haven't already donated to try to donate, by Sunday, let's say, so that by Monday comes around when the reporters are contacting me to talk about this, we can make those numbers even higher. It would certainly be something if I can get up to $1 million total, which would include the money bomb and what we've done. We're about maybe, 220,000, 230,000 names away, dollars away. It's not that far. So maybe some of the people that already contributed, if you kicked in $100, step it up to 200. If you kicked in 50, make it 100. It might go a long way in really making a statement, although I think the totals are already pretty good. The higher we can make that number, the more impressed the mainstream media will be, the more impressed the political establishment will be at how effectively this message resonates with how many people and how willing people are to support a candidate who is espousing my point of view, who really wants to shrink government, to rein in government spending, to restore free market principles, that talks about sound money. It'd be interesting to really show the people, how much deep support these issues have across the nation. Now, also, getting back into the markets on Friday, of course, we had the jobs numbers. And the jobs numbers came in much better than estimated. Now, I'm saying better in that it was still a very bad report. And in normal times, it would have been considered a horrible report. We lost about 250,000 jobs. But the expectations were for a loss, I think, of 325,000 jobs. So the numbers were not as bad as people had feared. Also, the unemployment rate ticked down from 9.5% to 9.4%. Now, that's still a lot of unemployment. But again, the media, President Obama, Wall Street, again, they're jumping on this data to show that there's real improvement. Now, certainly the numbers are not as bad as they were. But we're still losing jobs. We still lost 250,000 jobs. And some of the jobs that we gained were in government, and these are not the jobs that we want to gain. These are jobs that subtract from our real output because these are not productive jobs. Government jobs in general have to be supported by everybody else. They're not adding to the economic pot, they're subtracting from it. So the fact that we have more people working for government is not something that we should celebrate. That is part of the problem. We want to transition people out of government jobs into the private sector so they can actually be productive, not have to be supported by those of us who are. But of course, you can never have, we were shedding jobs, huge 500,000 in 1 month. Obviously you can't keep up that pace forever. There's going to be some type of slowdown in the rate at which we lose jobs. But that's a far cry from creating jobs. If we keep losing jobs at a slow pace, people are out of work. The recession is getting worse. Even if it's getting worse at a slower pace, it's still getting worse. The economy is still weakening. Now, they're really grasping for straws to try to say that, because it's getting weaker at a slower rate, that it's all going to turn around. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we print some, positive GDP quarters. We can certainly have a quarter or two where GDP is not negative, but that doesn't mean we're out of the recession, because we can very easily slip back into some very, very big negative GDP quarters, maybe even worse than some of the ones that we've had. Would that mean that the recession ended and now there's a real brand new recession? No, it's all part of the same thing. We could be going through this process for another 5 or 10 years, where we can have a lot of weak GDP numbers, a lot of contraction with some anemic growth and then some more contraction. That doesn't mean that we keep going from recession to recovery to recession to recovery. I think it's all part of the same recession, or more aptly put, the same depression. And all along the way, every time there's some kind of sign, some kind of a glimmer of hope for the optimists to cling to, they're going to try to say, aha, you see, it's over with, it's getting better. But it's not going to get better. We're not going to solve these problems until the government stops making them worse, until the government stops the bailouts and stops the stimulus and allows the recession to really work its course and do what it's designed to do, purge the economy of all the malinvestments and all the mistakes of the artificial boom that made this recession necessary. Painful as it is, we have to live through it because the alternative is even worse. Until we do that, there is going to be no meaningful recovery. There may be some signs, but they're going to be false signs. They're going to be these phony green shoots. We have to look beyond that and understand what's really going on. Now, also, I wanted to comment on this TV appearance that I made on Friday on MSNBC. In the morning on Friday, I was on Morning Joe with Joe Scarborough. He's a very congenial host. I think he's very much aligned with my way of thinking, so it was a very good interview, as was my last appearance on Morning Joe. But while on the show, there was another guy on the panel, this guy Lawrence O'Donnell, who towards the end of it tried to engage me on the healthcare issue. And obviously we had a very different point of view. What happened is he called me up later on to book me for the Ed Show, where he was filling in, and he was going to host this show. And so I get in there, and he wants to talk to me about healthcare. And if you watch it, there are a lot of versions of this on YouTube. But even the guy basically wouldn't let me talk, and he kept trying to define my position himself and put words in his mouth. So instead of giving me an actual opportunity to articulate my position, he told me what my position was and described it the way he believed it was, the way he wanted it to be. And he tried to define me and make all these sound bites. And it was almost laughable as I was sitting there, that this guy would not let me talk and had a preconceived notion about everything he thought I was going to say, and he proceeded to say it, even though I was sitting there, even though I could have articulated my own position had he only given me a chance. But obviously, it's his show and he's the host, and there's only so much you can do. I didn't want it to turn into a screaming, shouting match, so I try to be polite. But I even as I was sitting there, I was almost laughing to myself how comical this thing looked. What was even the point of having me there? He could have ranted and raved without me. But of course, he wants to label me as some kind of mean guy that doesn't care about the poor, that doesn't care about people who don't have health care. But anyway, take a look at it. It's on YouTube and see for yourself. Anyway, I'm running out of time today. Anyway, thanks to everybody who donated